Hello, and welcome to the podcast Justice Unbound, about women, religion, and the State of Israel. In this podcast, we will take you behind the closed doors of the Israeli rabbinic courts, where all hearings are held in camera, closed to the public, and where the state applies religious laws to decide the fate of women trapped in marital captivity, agunot, of children stigmatized because of their mother's sexual partners, mamzerim, of converts who did not keep the Sabbath, and where citizens are cross-examined about whether they are Jewish enough, and much, much more. Justice Unbound is written and produced by the Center for Women's Justice, CWJ. I am your host, Susan Weiss, a divorce lawyer with a PhD in sociology and anthropology, and the founder of the Center for Women's Justice.
And I'm your host, Rivkah Lubitch, a rabbinic court pleader who represented many women in Israeli rabbinic courts. I'm also a religious feminist.
In today's episode, we will be talking about annulment. If a Jewish marriage was never consummated, is that grounds for annulment? We will also introduce the concept referred to in Hebrew as ma'is alay, he disgusts me, referring to the circumstances under which a Jewish woman refuses to sleep with her husband because she cannot stand to be with him.
Warning, this episode is a bit X-rated, so you might want to use your discretion when listening to it.
In the last episodes, we explained how Jewish marriage is a type of purchase contract, not an exchange of vows of fidelity and love. Jewish marriage is a legal act in which the husband publicly announces his acquisition of unilateral rights over his wife's sexuality. So here are the questions for this episode. If a woman is her husband's sexual property, does that mean that he gets to decide what to do with her, whether to sleep with her or not? So as usual, we will start with one of your cases, Rivkah. That's always the best way to understand how things really work. This story we entitled, She Was Just 17. Our apologies to the Beatles.
Okay, I actually think that this was the only case in which I ever received the initial phone call from a man, and he wasn't the husband. A young guy with a heavy Russian accent called and told me about his neighbor, a woman who is a friend. Now, we all know what that means, at least I thought I did. I asked him why she didn't call. He told me that she didn't speak well. He didn't expand beyond that, but it was definitely a strange start. Anyway, the woman friend came into my office the next day, and she indeed did not speak very well. She spoke very slowly, very simply, and mostly she just sat still, quietly staring into the air. It was only with great effort that I managed to get her to talk to me.
Rivkah, do you think she might have been on the spectrum?
Well, I didn't think of it at that time. Perhaps it was just some social backwardness without a medical label, or perhaps some sort of mental disability. What I knew was that something was not 100% with her. I asked her if she had had a language barrier. Perhaps she was an immigrant and not a native Israeli speaker. She said, "No, why does everybody ask me that?" But it does not really matter what exactly was wrong with her, though it's clear that she needed extra care and kindness, not only from professionals like me, but also from the rabbinic courts. Anyway, she was, believe it or not, 21 when she saw me and had already been married for 4 years. I was horrified. She was my daughter's age at the time. I got a stomachache from dealing with this case. I felt so bad.
What? How could that really be? Today, that would be illegal. You have to be at least 18 in Israel to get married.
Yes, and her husband was about 10 years older than she was. Anyway, a rabbi married the couple in a private ceremony 2 months before she turned 17.
Oh, like the bigamous couple in our last episode.
Exactly. A private rabbi oversaw a perfectly halachic marriage, so from the perspective of Jewish law, she was certainly married and could move in with this man without feeling like she was living in sin. A few months after she turned 17, the couple married again in a religious ceremony, this time with a licensed rabbi, and their marriage was registered with the state. Though she had clearly been running away from something bad when she got married, it seemed that she had gone from bad to worse. Her life with her new husband was awful. She was totally repulsed by him. But here's the thing, he didn't do anything bad to her. She couldn't say even one bad word about him. The only thing she kept telling me was that she couldn't stand to be close to him. She kept saying, if you saw him, you'd understand. I can't let him lay a finger on me. I just can't. They had no sex life. They lived under the same roof in a rented apartment for 2 years until she was 19 without having had sexual relations at all. And then they each went their own way. For the next 2 years, they had nothing to do with each other. They had no children, obviously, no money, and I don't think he worked. If I recall, he was studying in some yeshiva.
Rivkah, I'm not really understanding a few things about this story. Why did she marry him if she couldn't stand him? Had she ever slept with him? Why didn't he just agree to give her the get and get on with his life and let her get on with her life?
Okay, I can answer the second question more easily than the first. He would have been happy to divorce her. He was a misken, a nebuch. He agreed to the divorce, but, would you believe it, his father interfered and refused to let him give his wife a get. The father, who came to the courts, told the rabbis that his son could not divorce his wife because she owed him money for the cost of the wedding. She didn't have that money. And anyway, as you said to me at the time, if the father or the son has a legal claim for money, they should sue in civil court. Trying to get the money in exchange for the get is just extortion. The religious courts shouldn't be agreeing to this. So that was the situation when I took the case on. In the first hearing that I attended, I thought perhaps maybe the rabbis understood that there might be something wrong with the husband. But frankly, all they were doing was listening, talking, and more accurately, negotiating with the husband's father. They needed the father's agreement for the divorce. If the father wasn't going to agree for the son to give the get, the rabbis weren't going to pressure the husband to do it.
Again, not a great method of divorce resolution. So let's get back to the first question. Why did she marry him?
Why did she marry him? And what exactly was going on with their sex life? Well, according to the little information I was able to extract from my client, it appears that she did sleep with him once, but it was before the wedding. Now, that explained to me why she couldn't stomach doing it again. She told me that his mother had bought them all kinds of sex toys to get them going, but it wasn't working out. She kept repeating, I can't have him touch me even with a finger. You know, Susan, when you have a client, you have to be really careful of what you ask them. And you have to try and respect their privacy. It was especially hard with her since, as I explained before, she wasn't talking. I think I only fully understood the issue on the day that she got divorced and we sat together for hours. Then I heard about her sick parents, her disabled sibling, and her terrible living conditions. She needed a man to escape from her family, but her plan backfired. It was just not working out. They were two nebuchs, and it didn't work out because there is more to marriage than living together under one roof.
Rivkah, did the rabbis want to know all the details about the couple's sex life?
They did know all the details. They already knew it all before I stepped into her case.
So if the rabbis knew that she wasn't having sexual relations, whether because her husband couldn't or because she couldn't bring herself to sleep with him, isn't that reason enough for the rabbis to annul the marriage? Or at the very least to encourage the husband to give her a get?
Sorry, I researched that one thoroughly. I tried to argue that there had been no sexual relations after the second marriage ceremony, only after the first one, and that the first ceremony was null and void because there had been no kosher witness at the ceremony. In other words, I tried to say that the marriage itself had not been consummated. But all that line of argument wouldn't have worked anyway. It's a Christian idea. The second marriage was certainly kosher, valid, and binding, and it was even officially registered with the state. The idea that a marriage is void because there is no sex isn't, as I said before, a Jewish notion. In Judaism, the minute the man says, Harei at, you are sanctified to me, the woman is mikudeshet and no sexual encounter is needed.
Okay, so I was right at the outset of this podcast. Once the wife is the husband's exclusive sexual property, he, and only he can decide what and how he wants to use that property. You can't annul a purchase agreement. What an awful story. But I want to push you on this matter just a little bit more. Can't the rabbis force the husband to give up his property, or at least to convince him to give up his property? What about the notion of ma'is alay? He disgusts me. Isn't that an idea already raised in the early Jewish sources?
So some sources held that a woman who claims to be disgusted by her husband is entitled to get out of the marriage, and her husband should be forced to give her a get. The main rabbi who was clear about this is the Rambam from the 12th century, Maimonides, who said that the bet din should beat the husband till he gives a get, because a woman is not in captivity, that she has to have relations with a man that she hates. The only problem is that many rabbis were against this ruling and claimed that it would bring many mamzerim. Since a get given by force is not kosher, they said, and a woman who receives a get by force would think she's divorced, go off with another man, and have children when she was actually still married. The opposed rabbis' problem was because they were afraid that the woman may have had her eye on someone else and hence lie and say that he disgusts her. So, some rabbis say that it is not grounds at all for divorce. Some say that the woman needs to prove that he is repulsive to anyone, even to them objectively, so that they can be sure she doesn't have her eye on someone. Bottom line, it's not very helpful for a woman today in religious courts. In our case, he disgusted her, but she could not prove it to be objective in any way, and the court didn't seem to be repulsed by him.
Wow. Tell us how this story ended.
Well, the rabbis refused to interfere in any way and help her. The head rabbi, Av Bet Hadin, called me aside and said, "Listen, there is no good argument here. We will not oblige him to give a divorce to her. She will have to pay him." He actually said that to me in those words. It's really unbelievable to... When I'm saying it, I'm thinking, oh my God, this didn't really happen, but it did. And that's how it went. They pressured the wife to agree to pay the husband and his father the amount of money that the father had demanded. She returned to the next hearing a happy lady. She said that she went and collected money in Bnei Brak, and one rabbi gave her a lot of money. She had exactly half the amount requested. She actually thought that the husband would let it go, that he would not demand the other half. But when the woman told the rabbi the amount that she had brought to the hearing, the rabbi asked her, "Where's the rest?" The woman blushed and said that that was what she was able to raise. The rabbi told our client to go back and collect the rest of the amount from the same place where she had raised the amount brought to the court that day. The woman realized that she would not be able to raise the money. Another 6 months passed, and she returned to the court. She agreed to commit to paying a very small amount to her husband for a whole year every month in exchange for the divorce.
Rivkah, why did you let this happen?
Okay, Susan, please don't make me feel guilty. There was absolutely nothing that I could do. She was 22 by then. I thought that a few $100s a month was the only way to get her freedom and to allow her to have children that were not banned and stigmatized.
So she got the get?
Yes, but it didn't turn out so great. She actually fled the country. I suppose she knew that she couldn't make the payments, and she got on a plane to who knows where. I heard this from the husband, believe it or not, who called me crying that she disappeared and won't be paying him. Susan, my heart goes out to this poor woman who I can just imagine wandering around who knows where in the world just to get away while her debt towards her husband is piling up.
Ay, oh my heavens, ay. Another terrible story with so much wrong. Again, the thing that stands out the most for me is the involvement of the rabbinic courts in what is, in this case too, a very blatant example of extortion. Again and once again, I am wondering, what exactly is the role of a rabbinic court? Or the rabbinic judges, the dayanim? What do they do if they cannot do justice in the case where there is obviously no marriage left? Do they really think that this is an example of a successful dispute resolution?
In the next episode, we will dive deeper into those questions.
So, Rivkah, I think we'll again wrap it up for now. This has been a lot for our listeners to absorb. We hope you'll stay with us for more. We have so much to talk about. Thank you for listening to the Center for Women's Justices podcast, Justice Unbound, Women, Religion, and the State of Israel. We would love to hear your comments and thoughts. Please reach out to us on social media, on the Center for Women's Justices page, on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
This podcast was produced thanks to the generous support of the Gimprich Family Foundation. Thank you, Hannah Wacholder, Katzman, and Rachel Stomel for your help. I am Rivkah Lubitch.
And I am Susan Weiss. Thank you for listening.